The past has a way of coming back to haunt us. But what if the evil that haunts your family isn't just a ghost of the past? What if it's something much darker? Something that has been with you all along? Welcome back to Ghast, where the most twisted nightmares come to life. My name is Bruce Smithers, and tonight we have 3 chilling tales that will make you question the true nature of your own reality. My friend Sam has always been troubled. The sort of kid you knew would go down the wrong path and wind up in the news. I remember when the story about Daniel Petrick came out. He was that teen who, back in 2007, took his father's gun from a safe after his parents took away Halo 3. He came up behind them while they were on the sofa watching TV, told them he had a surprise for them, and shot them both in the back of the head. Not long after the Petrick story came out, I remember Sam laughing and telling me, "Dummy got caught almost immediately. If I were ever going to do something like that, I'd be smarter about it." We lived only 3 houses apart, so we used to hang out a lot. Sam was obsessed with true crime, which meant we watched a ton of it. He was drawn to the most heinous stuff, like Catherine Knight, the woman who in 2000 butchered her husband and cooked him up into a meal and hung his skin up to dry. The officers who came to her house brushed against the skin, thinking it was a curtain. This was way inappropriate for 12-year-olds, of course, but neither of us had very involved parents. Maybe because of all this stuff, Sam was convinced that evil was pretty much everywhere. "Dude," he said, "if this is how much we see, the people who are caught, how many do you think get away with it?" "Not many," I said confidently. "If they did, we'd hear about it in the news. People would be disappearing. But think how many might be labelled accidents, but are really murders. Falls down the stairs, heart attacks. I bet so many people bump off old folks when they don't want to take care of them or want their money." "Doubt it," I said again. "It would be so easy," said Sam. "I bet there's tons of murders sliding under the radar because people just don't expect you to actually kill. So easy." In hindsight, this conversation screams red flag, but as kids, we both had a morbid fascination with this stuff. But by far, Sam's biggest obsession was the piano wire killer, who strangled 4 women in our city and was never caught. I found out from Sam's dad, not from Sam himself, that one of the victims was actually Sam's older half-sister. She was abducted in '99 when Sam was only 4 years old. Like all the victims, she was found naked, her body recovered from the tunnels under Nicollet Island. And finally, I understood the motive for his true crime obsession. He wanted to catch the person who'd killed his sister. He was trying to understand how it happened. When I asked him about her, he claimed to remember her singing to him and playing on the swings, and admitted he watched every scrap of news relating to her death that he could. So that summer, I suggested we search, go into the tunnels and look for clues. "Bro," Sam's eyes lit up. "That would be dope." We spent a whole summer scoping out those tunnels, winding through unlit utility passages, seemingly forever through the cool dark. If you know your way, you can crawl through a narrow passage to Satan's Cave, where teens and urban explorers sneak in to drink, light up, and graffiti their names. There are even some carvings on the cave walls, people have made of goat heads and demon faces. But it's mostly just discarded beer bottles and trash. The explorations were thrilling, but the closest we found to anything suspicious was a switchblade, a discarded baby doll, and a loop of wire that seemed likely to have come from a bracelet. Sam insisted the news was all wrong, that the killer wasn't anything like people suspected. Maybe he was right, but he was wrong about the tunnels. There was no evidence there of any killer whatsoever, piano wire or otherwise. After that summer, our interests shifted from true crime to video games. We played lots of shooters. I got into sports, taekwondo, and later rowing, backpacking, any wilderness stuff. Sam got into drugs. We'd still occasionally meet up for a hike. I'd go for the nature. He'd go for the opportunity to light up and escape his parents' constant squabbles. But I saw less and less of him. By the time I entered college, he was in and out of jail, getting in trouble for dealing, for breaking and entering, petty crime stuff. The last time I heard from him was when he called me from jail asking me to bail him out, reminding me what good friends we used to be, reminiscing. "Hey Rufus," he said, "remember that summer we spent searching the tunnels? Yeah, pretty transparent, trying to tug at my heartstrings with a bond that had wilted years ago. But I smiled anyway because those were better times. That was dope, he said. We never did find much, did we? Nope. Bet if we searched those tunnels now, things would be different. Hey, maybe we go again once I'm out, yeah? Sure. So, I was wondering if you could do me a favor. Yeah, okay, I was a sucker. I went and bailed him out later that day. We made plans to hang out, maybe to explore those tunnels again. I knew he'd blow me off, but what can I say? He was an old friend, and I felt bad that he'd wound up this way while my life was pretty steady. What's more, he'd found out while in custody that his dad had died. Suicide, apparently. Which was not a surprise to anyone who knew Sam's father, but nonetheless surely must have hit Sam hard. Sam was worried now about his mom, having to raise his baby sister alone. Plus, they needed money. They always needed money. He wanted to go check up on the two of them, make sure they were doing okay without his dad. I told him I was here if he or his family needed any help. I gave him my condolences. He just smiled and told me thanks, and didn't mention his father again on the drive back. You know, they actually found new evidence in the case, he said to me when I dropped him off. Really? Yeah, the ghost of a smile. I'll tell you about it next week. But he didn't get a chance. I got a voice call from him 2 days before we were supposed to meet up. The call dropped before I could answer. When I tried calling him back, it rang a few times and stopped. My subsequent calls went straight to voicemail. Sam ghosting me was nothing new. But when our appointed meet-up passed and he still wasn't replying to me, I messaged his mom. She said he'd left ranting about the piano wire killer and the tunnels, but she thought it was just his usual talk. He was always spouting big ideas and conspiracy theories, never amounting to anything. She started to complain how she'd thrown her back out, and with him running off again, there was no one to help but Maisie, his little sister. The trash and laundry were too heavy for her to lift by herself. I told her I'd come by later, but now I was truly worried for Sam. Called, messaged, even reported my concerns to police, but they jumped right to assuming he'd skipped town to avoid a court hearing, which was, I admit, a pretty plausible assumption. No trace of him anywhere. Still no signal from his phone. He'd gotten out of jail, mentioned new evidence, arranged to meet me, and vanished. I decided to check the tunnels. The entrance we'd used as kids was smaller and more overgrown than I remembered. I climbed down the embankment through brush and dry leaves, out onto the concrete ledge, and then ducked into the cool darkness of the tunnel with its low ceiling and narrow walls. Flicked on my flashlight. The faint odour of sewage wafted to my nostrils as I made my way forward, the only sound the echo of my boots treading on the concrete. After a while of running my hand along the cool brick, I paused and turned to glance behind me. The entrance had become a distant square of white light. Was this really a good idea? Well, obviously not. I might go stumbling into whatever had caused Sam to disappear. Besides which, I couldn't remember the directions to Satan's cave. And even if I did find my way in, what was I supposed to be looking for? You know, they actually found new evidence in the case? Sam's hint in our last conversation had me tugging out my phone, searching the news, and I was stunned at the headline that came up. 25 years after brutal killings, piano wire killer confesses. Whoa. Sam had seriously downplayed this. It wasn't just new evidence, the killer was actually in custody, and had confessed. So where was Sam then? Maybe the police were right about him skipping town. Leaving his mother alone to look after his sister, me scrambling to find him, and no one to pick up the pieces from his shattered life. I sighed and headed over to help his mom take out the trash. Sam's car was in the back when I pulled up, and my spirits lifted. I was eager to chew him out for all the usual trouble, but when I got inside, his mom told me he wasn't back yet. His car battery had died and he'd left by bike a few days ago. The house was a mess, filled with empty pizza boxes, several full garbage bags, laundry piled up. Sam's mom, Eleanor, had thrown her back out, I remembered, and couldn't lift heavy things, so without Sam she had no one to take out the trash or carry loads of laundry besides Maisie. And Maisie wasn't a very consistent helper, being only 11 years old. Is that Rufus? Maisie came bounding down as I was collecting the trash bags. Her nose wrinkled. It smells terrible in here. You should help your mom more, I said. Once I'd cleared the trash out, I was getting ready to leave when on a sudden impulse I went upstairs to the room Sam had been using, thinking he might have left me some hint as to where he'd gone. But I found the room taped off with a giant "Keep Out" sign. Maisie, bouncing up the stairs after me, told me no one was allowed in. Especially me, she added, making a face. Well, I'm his best friend, so I'm allowed, I said. But the door was locked. Undeterred, I started opening drawers downstairs in the main room. When we were little, Sam would sometimes lock his door and his parents would open it and tell him not to shut them out. I vaguely remembered there being a key kept in a junk drawer. While searching, I called out to Sam's mom asking if she'd heard anything from him. She shouted back from the basement, "He'll turn up eventually, like a bad penny." I grunted and opened a desk drawer. No keys, just old electronics and cell phones, and closed it. Then opened it again and blinked. Sam's cell phone. I recognized it from the day I bailed him out. As soon as I had it in my hand, its heavy solidity made my pulse ratchet up. I brought it out to my car and plugged it in. Started up the phone. Couldn't get past the password. After a few more tries, I went back inside. Sam's mom was still doing laundry. I told Maisie to go sit in my car, that I'd take her to get ice cream in a few minutes, and then I went upstairs. My heart was pounding harder now. The unpleasant odour still lingered, despite the garbage having been cleared out. Sweat pooled under my armpits as I peeled the tape off the door and put my shoulder against it. It didn't require much force. A couple of short bursts and I flung it open. Sam's bed was unmade. Laundry on the floor. Dirty dishes. Messy like his life. No sign of him. My eyes turned to the closet, to the faint stain of reddish-brown on the carpet. I slid the door open, wobbly in its tracks. My eyes watered. The stench hit me, like sewage and old meat. I closed the door and dialed the police. I bet there's tons of murders sliding under the radar because people just don't expect you to actually kill. So easy. After unlocking Sam's phone, the police discovered he'd been drafting me an email. It included a link to a more detailed article about the piano wire killer's confession. A confession to 3 of the 4 murders, but not to the murder of Sam's sister. Police suspected, even back in 1999, that it was a copycat killing. Suspected because the type of wire used to strangle her didn't match with the other victims. Over the years, I'd forgotten this detail. Sam never did. His mom was still downstairs when the police arrived, and I showed them his body, tucked into the closet and curled as if asleep, but rotting, leaking. Only later would the pieces fall into place, that even as a child he'd suspected his mother of murdering the half-sister who was born from another woman. That the entire summer we explored the tunnels, that's what he was really looking for, evidence to connect his mother to her death. We found nothing back then, but these past weeks, the piano wire killer's confession brought it all back. A confession Sam's father likely read, but by the time Sam got out of custody, his father was dead. Sam was looking for proof, not only of his sister's murder, but also his father's. He died of blunt force trauma to the head. Unlike his sister's or father's deaths, which were planned carefully enough, even now it was hard to prove them. Police seemed to think his was improvised. Perhaps he confronted his mother, or perhaps she caught him snooping. She likely threw her back out, trying to move his body. Sticking him in the closet and sealing the room was a stopgap measure. But even so, she might have gotten away with it, and I might have assumed he was still out in the world somewhere, running into trouble like always, if I hadn't seen his phone. It would be so easy. I never knew when he said this that he was voicing suspicions about his own mother. No wonder his worldview was so bleak, his sense of people one of constant mistrust. He didn't confide in anyone, not even me. But I'm glad the truth is finally out. I just wonder how many deaths, how many assumed accidents, how many heinous misdeeds go flying under the radar like he says. I'm worried that my best friend has always been right, and it's so much more than we realize. Some secrets are better left buried. But when the truth finally comes to light, the consequences can be devastating. In our next story, one man learns that some challenges come with a price too terrible to comprehend. You're going to give me $100 to sit inside this cardboard box for 2 minutes? I asked, feeling the booze slosh around my brain. It's that simple, the street performer said with a cocksure grin. You last 2 minutes inside the box. You get $100. What if I don't make it 2 minutes? You don't get $100. What's inside the box? The street performer opened the top of the large refrigerator box and, true to his word, it was empty. So what's the catch? My friend Paul said. There's always a catch. No catch. You go in of your own free will. You get out of your own free will. You put 2 minutes between those moments, you get $100. Let me see the money, I said. The street performer didn't look like he had a spare franklin to part with. He wore a stained, threadbare suit with patches on the elbows and tearing at the sleeves. Atop his head was a busted top hat that looked like it had survived since the Great Depression. His feet were covered in mismatched, filthy docksiders that looked like they'd been hauled up from some mucky swamp. That said, the street performer pulled a crisp and clean $100 bill from under his hat. I feel like if I go in, you're going to kick the box or pour old soup on me or some other dumb prank. Old soup? I asked, chuckling. Paul laughed. I dunno, man. Old clam chowder or something. The street performer shook his head. No, sir. I'm not a fan of chowder or pranks, and I don't have any idea what a TikTok is. I'm just an honest man looking to give away $100 to the bravest and boldest among you. That's definitely not you, Paul, I said, laughing. Shut up, bro, Paul said. You gonna do it? I asked. Why don't you do it? He shot back. Not bold enough? No, not really. Plus, if I sit down on the ground, I may not be able to get back up. I think I shouldn't have had that last drink. I'm going to call that Uber. Your name's Paul, correct? The street performer asked my friend. Yeah. Paul, let me ask you this. Could you use $100? Definitely. Especially after what I spent tonight. Big brave man like you couldn't be afraid of a simple cardboard box? Not at all, I'm not. Do you have 2 minutes to spare? How long until the Uber gets here? Paul asked me. 5 minutes, I said. Give or take. Paul looked at the box and back to the street performer before glancing at me. What do you think? Is it worth it? Man, I don't know. I didn't. The alcohol was not only on top of me, but was beating my temples with rock hammers. I mean, the whole thing is really weird, but he hasn't explained a downside. I haven't informed you of any downsides, because there isn't one, the street performer said with a wink. This guerrilla marketing for a box company, or do you work for Frigidaire? I asked. No, sir, I work for me, myself and I, the street performer said. Nobody likes having a boss, am I right? Especially if you knew my boss, I said. He makes Attila the Hun look like Daffy Duck. Fine, man, Paul said suddenly. I'll do it. Wonderful, the street performer said. Only, Paul added, looking at me, if we can go to the dance club after I get out. Bro, I am beat, I said, yawning. I don't have the energy. You don't have enough energy to look at girls? No, I said, surprising myself. I might pass out in the Uber. If you're going to throw up in the alley, Paul said. They charge extra if they have to clean up any bodily fluids. Maybe I'll puke in the box before you get in. Please don't vomit inside the box, the street performer said. It's one of a kind. These things come off an assembly line, Paul said. Hardly one of a kind. I glanced at my phone, let my vision refocus, and noticed the Uber's arrival time. You got 3 minutes, dude. You going in or not? Let's do it. Who keeps time? Time keeps itself. However, I have a pocket watch to assist us, the street performer said, pulling out a beat-up brass pocket watch from inside his suit jacket. Climb in now. I'll count you down. Paul opened the top flaps and placed one foot inside. He was unsteady on his drunk legs, and I started laughing at his teetering. He flipped me off, steadied himself, and placed the second leg inside. He sat down, shot me a grin, and said, I want to go to Golden Apples after. That girl Janine is there this weekend. She's not into you, I said. Yet, he said with a smile before grabbing the flaps and closing himself in the box. Your time starts in 3, 2, 1, the street performer said, watching the second hand on his watch spin past 12. Go! Paul sat there for a minute before he started chuckling. I couldn't help but join in. What even was this? In a million years, I'd never be able to guess that this is where the night would end, inside a cardboard box. You start by having a few too many cheap domestics during a ball game and end up probably being hustled by an unhoused guy in a top hat. This is so stupid, I said, barely holding back laughter. They said the same thing about the dog launched into space. Hey Leica, how dark is it up there? I asked. Not very, Paul said, his voice muffled by the cardboard. He started a giggle fit again before adding, I feel like a dumbass. If the shoe fits, I said. The box suddenly jostled violently. It went still for a beat before rocking back and forth again. From inside the box, I could hear Paul moving and adjusting. Bro, stop moving, I said. I'm not doing that, he said. 30 seconds, the street performer yelled out. Wait a second, it just got dark, really dark. You can't see the neon light from the bar? No, he said, his voice unsure. Wait, there's some kind of white light off in the distance. The distance? I asked, confused. You're inside a box. The farthest distance is a foot away. Hey, Mr. Top Hat, is there a screen hidden in here? Like a TV screen or something? The street performer ignored him. What's going on? I asked. There's something approaching the box. Yeah, the Uber, I said with a drunken laugh. No, like there is someone walking toward the inside of the box, Paul said. It looks like a person, but that doesn't make any sense. His voice went from playful drunk to concerned drunk. He was sloshed, but a small part of his brain was still on guard. It told him there was danger around him, but it didn't make any sense as he was sitting inside a cardboard box on the sidewalk of an empty street. 45 seconds! Paul, stop messing around. Bro, I'm serious, he said. Some guy, I think it's a guy anyway, is walking toward me. Wait. Oh no, there are 2, no 3. Oh no. 4. I'm surrounded by shadow figures. Shadow figures, I asked. They look like people, but different. You messing with me? There aren't any features that I can see. They look like silhouettes. Dude, stop. The joke's not funny anymore. Get out, huh? The Uber is almost here anyway. Shh, he hissed. I think they can hear your voice. I turned to the street performer. What's going on here? What's the gag? He ignored me. His eyes stayed trained on the pocket watch's quickly rotating second hand. 1 minute. Halfway there, he yelled. I can hear them speaking. It's faint, but what? It doesn't sound like any language I've ever heard. Paul, enough's enough. Come on out, man. Our ride is turning down the street. Oh no, I think they saw me, he said, his voice quivering. Who's they? These shadow figures. Oh no, he said, fear lacing his words. I heard him start kicking the side of the box from the inside. The cardboard bent with each kick, but never broke. Get moving, I said. I'm trying to run, but my body isn't moving. Dude, you're kicking the box, I said. That's not me. My body is frozen, and they're coming. Oh no. Get out of the box, Paul. 1 minute, 30 seconds. The street performer yelled, best time of the night. One of them is coming for me, Paul said in a panic. Oh my goodness, they have eyes, but not like ours. His eyes, I can see. Paul trailed off. You can see what? Everything, he said. They're showing me everything. 1 minute 40. The money is as good as yours, stranger. There's fire, it's everywhere. The ground is sizzling. I can feel the heat. It's burning me through my pants. Ah, what is this? Get out of the box now, Paul. The other 3 are closing in. Their eyes are glowing white. I can see the ends of the earth, the end of the sky, the end of it all. The fires, they burn. Then Paul started screaming. Not, I stubbed my toe screams, but I'm being murdered and the only person who'll ever hear this is my killer screams. Open the box, I yelled at the street performer. Right now. But he didn't move an inch. He kept his eyes trained on his watch. 10 seconds remaining, the street performer yelled. 10. I leaned over and tried to rip open the flaps on top of the box, but they weren't moving. They felt like 1,000 pounds and I couldn't budge them. I slammed my hand down on the cardboard and it felt like I had just hit concrete. My hand throbbed, but I tried again to rip the box open to no avail. Push up, Paul, I screamed at the top of the box. Listen to my voice and come for it. 9, 8, 7. Why are you all showing me this? Paul said through sobs. I don't want to watch them all die. Paul, sit up. Come on, man, sit up. 6, 5, 4. The box was jostling back and forth, being shaken by unseen forces. It jumped an inch off the ground and rocked around like bored kids beat it with bats. I'm watching them tear me apart, Paul said with a whimper. I'm above them now. I'm being pulled away, but I can see my body. There's so much blood, so much fire. Get out! What's pulling me into the air? Paul asked, his voice sounding distant. 3, Paul, I'm coming. I threw my whole body at the box, trying to knock it on its side. I hoped to see Paul come tumbling out, but when I hit the cardboard, it didn't move an inch. It clanged like it was made from pure steel. I braced myself on the ground and kicked the side of the box with all my might, and instantly felt a lightning bolt of pain rush my leg up and spine. There was nothing I could do. 2. I'm so high. I can see it. I can see the... Oh my goodness. No, it can't be. No. Paul screamed, and it sounded like it was falling now. Oh no! The ground! It's opening! From the sidewalk, I looked up at the street performer with hate in my eyes and yelled, "Let him go! Open the box! I'm falling through the world! How? Oh no! Oh God, please let me go! 1 and time!" The street performer yelled, raising his hands in victory. The box went still. "Paul, you won!" the street performer exclaimed triumphantly. "The first of the night." He calmly tucked his pocket watch back into his jacket pocket. He replaced it with a small dollar store confetti popper. He gently yanked the string of the popper and blasted bits of colourful paper and glitter into the air. It landed all around me. I lunged at the box and tried to rip open the top again. This time, the flaps moved as easily as expected. But when I pulled them back, Paul wasn't inside. Not a trace of him. The only thing I found was a crisp, new $100 bill. "Paul? Paul? What happened? Where are you?" "He's left the box," the street performer said. "His 2 minutes were up." I leaped onto my feet, ready to beat the street performer to a pulp, but when I glanced at where he had been standing, he was gone. I hadn't heard him run away or catch a cab or anything. Like Paul, there was no trace of him. It was like he'd never been there. From behind me, I heard a car downshift and come to a stop on the curb. There was the familiar whine of an electric window being rolled down, followed by a monotonous voice calling out my name. My Uber had arrived. I looked to where the box was, and it was gone too. All that was left was the $100 bill. "You still want your ride?" my driver said. "Did you see anyone with me?" "No," he said. "There wasn't a man in a busted top hat and a large refrigerator box standing here as you came down the street?" "I think you made a good decision calling an Uber," my driver deadpanned, adding, "If you puke in my car, there is a cleaning fee. So if you're gonna yak, just do it now, huh?" I felt my legs go weak. I didn't know what to do. My friend was gone, and the man who sent him away had vanished. I didn't even know what to say to the police. My friend climbed into a cardboard box and disappeared. No, I'm not drunk anymore. "You coming or what? This is my busy time." I looked down at the $100 bill and something caught my eye. Instead of Benjamin Franklin's face staring back at me, someone had scrawled a note. I picked up the note and held it close to my face. I'd know that handwriting anywhere. It was Paul's. The note read, "I've seen the end. You don't make it." "Buddy, you coming?" my driver asked. "Yeah," I said. I'm coming." That was several hours ago. I've been sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the $100 bill. I'm not sure what to do. My mind is mush, and it has nothing to do with the alcohol. I'm at a crossroads and don't know where to go. I don't know what to say to Paul's family. How do I even begin to explain this? I keep thinking I'm having a nightmare as I sleep one off, but I'm not. I'm sitting stock still in my kitchen as the first rays of the sun turn the black sky purple. There's a vice around my heart, a profound loss for my friend and fear for the message he left behind. I've seen the end, you don't make it. You try falling asleep after this. Sometimes the most horrifying monsters don't lurk in the shadows. They hide in plain sight, among our friends and neighbours. Our final tale tonight explores the darkness that can possess even those closest to us. "Hurry up in the shower. We have to leave soon." I yelled towards the bathroom at my husband. Every year, at some point in the days leading up to Christmas, our families get together. We were already making bad timing when he realised he needed a shower. I had misplaced my earrings, paranoid about making us even later. As I walked past the bathroom, I noticed the door wide open. My husband stood there, still naked from having recently departed the shower. He had draped a pastel orange towel over his head, one that I didn't even know we owned. It didn't cross my mind at the time, just a fleeting thought. He swayed gently from side to side like a swinging pendulum. I giggled. "Stop being silly. You know we're running late. Have you seen my earrings?" Immediately upon entering the bedroom, I spotted them gently glistening on the bedside table. Relieved, I yelled again, "Never mind, found them." As I put the first in, my gaze fell directly ahead of me at the painting of a lighthouse hung on our bedroom wall. My husband was never a stranger to local markets. He almost had a talent for buying the strangest items. I've grown used to it, but this painting always stood out to me as a bizarre purchase. The lighthouse stands as the subject, with a series of indistinct colourful blobs painted around the bottom, a crowd of nondescript people, I had always assumed. On the frame, at the bottom, a title or note or quote of some kind had been etched in, "The Jolly Good Fellows." My trail of thought was cut short as I failed to get the second earring in. I had stabbed myself slightly and began to head to the bathroom for the assistance of the mirror. He was still standing there, swaying. "Honey, we really need to go soon. Please get ready." I approached the mirror. Seeing no blood, I breathed a sigh of relief and put the second earring in. The whole time, from the corner of my eye, I could still see him swaying. The towel blocked any view of his head. My patience was wearing thin. Had he even sorted his clothes out yet? "Honey, come on," I spoke as I lifted the towel from his face. Peering under, I expected to see him smiling, acting playfully. I felt a little bad, but being ever aware of the ticking clock, sometimes I have to remind him to have urgency, even when he's just playing around. His eyes were wide. His face emotionless. He stared forward as though there wasn't a wall a few feet from his face, like he was looking just a little past everything. He stopped swaying as the towel was removed, but remained in this state. I gently held his hand. "Come with me, let's sit down." I knew something was wrong. As I guided him to the bed and sat him down, his arm felt limp, as though his muscles were void of any connection to the brain. "Let's get you some clothes, okay? We can talk about what's wrong." I tried to speak calmly as I turned around and searched through the wardrobe. I began asking questions, trying to take his mind off things. My mind, while still aware of the time, was now more focused on my husband's well-being. Noticing a lack of answers or responses, I turned back to face him. Have you ever jumped at the lack of something? Usually we jump at the sudden presence of something we were not expecting. Perhaps the sudden movement of an object we thought would remain motionless. But when I saw my husband wasn't behind me, my body jolted slightly. I hadn't heard him move or felt him walk past me. I expected him to still be on the bed. The lack thereof was enough of a shift to shock me. "Honey," I yelled slightly, wondering where he was. I walked past the bathroom. There he was. Orange towel draped over his head, swaying gently at the same rhythm as before. "If you don't respond to me, I'm calling an ambulance." I needed a quick answer. My mind jumped straight to some form of brain injury, perhaps from falling over in the shower. I knew that acting fast is the only chance you have to minimize damage. He didn't answer. I removed the towel from his head as I dialed emergency services. Again, he stopped swaying. As I explained everything to them, I watched as he knelt down, picked the towel back up, and draped it back over his head. The swaying continued thereafter. Paramedics arrived shortly. He put up no fight and allowed them to escort him to the ambulance in a wheelchair. I kept asking questions about whether he'd be okay. They had to keep assuring me that while the hospital would do everything they could, they had no information to go off of. My racing mind looked past this and continued to ask similar questions regardless. He kept trying to stand up while en route to the hospital, yet would be compliant when gently pushed back down. As long as someone was guiding him, he would follow. When this stopped, he would try to move. The same had happened back home. He only got up and left once I had sat him down and let go of him. Through the sound of the sirens wailing overhead, the bumps of the ambulance's journey, and trying to hold back my tears, I could hear a familiar tune. My husband, showing almost no other signs of activity, was gently humming. I leaned in to get a better listen. It was a very low tone, and each note seemed to begin as a hum, yet end as more of a raspy breath. Each one seemed to continue for slightly longer than they were supposed to, but I recognized this tune he was humming, "For he's a jolly good fellow." Arriving at the hospital felt like a blur. Everyone knew exactly where they were going. I was following along, completely lost in this maze of signs and painted lines intended to guide. We had left the ambulance and arrived at his assigned bed before I could process what was happening. As soon as he was laid down, the confusing blur continued. "Ma'am, could we borrow you in the next room? We just need you to fill out some paperwork." "Not until I know if my husband is okay," I snapped. "We understand, but the best chance at survival is if we understand everything. This paperwork will take care of some of that." I was assured that a doctor would be in the room shortly and that my husband was in good hands. I shouldn't have listened. They certainly didn't. I explained that he kept trying to get up and walk about, but they clearly underestimated. I hadn't even helped the lady fill out my husband's personal information before we were informed that he was missing. "He can't be far. Keep an eye on all entrances." The staff spoke to each other urgently. I was asked to remain calm and continue helping with the paperwork, but I refused. I attempted to run around the hospital to join the search, but was quickly told that I didn't have the authority to be wandering around alone. I hardly cared. My husband was the only thing on my mind, but I didn't want to be escorted out and risk not seeing him at all when he was found. I took my efforts outside the hospital. I looked around the parking area and then the nearby streets. After an hour and a half, I was still wandering, with no word from the hospital of any findings in the building. I began to walk home, hoping that somehow he had remembered the way. It was a 20-minute walk. I could not imagine that he had survived in his state, let alone managed to correctly identify the entire journey home. But it was worth a shot. I arrived to find our front window smashed. No glass on the pavement below told me that somebody had broken in. Perhaps I should have been more cautious, but I just wanted to know if my husband was inside. My hand shook as I struggled to get the key into the lock. Once I did, I turned the handle and ran inside. I don't think I even closed the door behind me. "Honey, are you here?" I don't know if I was surprised to see what I saw or whether I expected this. There he was, in the bathroom, orange towel draped over his head, swaying gently. This time, a pool of blood collected on the tiled floor below, dripping from his right arm. Cuts on his legs and torso told the full story. He had no concept of pain. He smashed the window to get back to this exact spot. The injuries meant nothing to him. For whatever reason, his mind was focused only on anchoring itself in that bathroom under the gentle weight of a towel. Crying, I approached him and lifted the towel slightly. I hardly even noticed the blood soaked into it. His eyes were red. Had he even blinked since this began? The humming continued. I should have contacted emergency services immediately, but instead, I just stood there. I stared into his eyes, pretending he was staring back into mine. I wanted him back. Gently, he lifted an arm and pulled the towel back down over his face. I don't know how long I stood there sobbing. "Please, talk to me. I love you." The gentle humming would have been comforting, but the slight inconsistency of the rhythm was a subtle reminder that my husband had no awareness. I thought back to all our recent conversations, everything we've ever done together. Lately, he's had a fascination with the ocean. I could never understand it. A horizon swallowed by the forever swaying and crashing of waves never appealed to me. He used to tell me all sorts of facts. One that particularly disturbed me was an old tradition of placing a towel over the faces of sailors who had passed while at sea. Once back on the shore, you'd place a towel over their face as you waited for somebody to arrive with help or a hearse. Curiosity having a moment of breakthrough as I grieved my still-living husband, I went into the bedroom. I took a closer look at the painting. The blobs at the bottom of the lighthouse, I had always assumed them to be nondescript people, with little detail added, though I had never understood why the blobs were so colourful. Only then did I realise they were not a crowd gathering at the bottom of the lighthouse. They were dozens of bodies, laid out on the shore. Pastel-coloured towels were draped over their faces. Perhaps my husband is there now. Forever visiting the lighthouse, staring into the horizon as it's swallowed by the ocean. These three tales have taken us on a harrowing journey through the darkest corners of human experience and remind us that our understanding of reality is more fragile than we'd like to believe. And sometimes the most devastating horrors often come from those closest to us. Tonight's stories came to us thanks to Reddit users at Let's Split Up, at Sunhead Prime, and Nom Nom Nation. Links to their posts are in the description below. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to like and subscribe to Ghast for more terrifying tales. And let us know in the comments which story sent the biggest chill down your spine. Until next time, remember, the shadows are always watching.